Good morning, piano parents. Thank you, as always, for tuning into the podcast this morning. This is episode 350. And ever since the beginning of the podcast, way back in episode 10, anytime I got to an episode that ended in a zero, I've offered you a list of 10 somethings. And it's kind of amazing to me to realize that we're at episode 350. So that means there have been 35 lists of 10 somethings. And if we average about 50 episodes per year, then we're closing in on our 7th year. The podcast started in August of 2016. And here we are, still enjoying each other's company and still meeting together every Monday, most Mondays, to share insights and hopefully helpful tips to help you as a piano parent as you guide your piano kid during their studies. In the show notes, I'll have a list of how you can find other lists of 10. I'll have a link. Sorry about that. I'll have a link to help you find other lists of previous 10 episodes where we've talked about 10 things to look out for when you're sitting at the piano, 10 things to 10 music videos to share with your piano kid that you can play along with, 10 ways to encourage a love of music, 10 ways you can genuinely compliment your piano kid. We've had a lot of great lists of 10. And thinking about this time of the year, and as we're getting closer to fall and closer to October, one of the first major holidays that we tend to share here in Texas or here in the United States, and maybe even in your part of the world, is Halloween. And I'm not a big scary kind of Halloween person, but it was always fun growing up to dress up in all kinds of different things. And sometimes my brother and I would coordinate our costumes. Sometimes we would do different characters. One time my daughters were little and I dressed Carrie up as Dorothy. And then Tracy was dressed up as a little dog, her dog Toto. And anyway, it's fun to dress up in costumes and share candy or go to a fall festival. Anyway, that's not what this podcast is about today. But along those lines, I thought I would share 10 things that you can do, piano kid, that will scare your teacher. And some of these are just kind of funny. Some of them are a little bit sarcastic, and they're not really listed in any particular order. But I'm going to start with the first thing. One way that you can scare your piano teacher is with intentional recital preparation. If your piano teacher shares with you that you're going to be having maybe a holiday recital coming up in December, or in my studio, our big major recital is in the spring. And if you let your piano teacher know that you have been studying your music, you have been practicing your music, and you are preparing for the recital, you've put the date on your calendar and you've made it a priority, you've invited friends and family to come enjoy the recital and attend the concert with you. Whoo, that is scary to a piano teacher. No, that's actually good. Please do that. Another thing that you might think would be scary to your piano teacher is if you arrive to your lesson with no books. And every teacher is different, but the way that looks in my studio, if you come to the lesson and you don't have your books, I understand. Sometimes your day starts very early. I have some students that are in swim. Their swim practice is at 5:45 in the morning. Blech. I am so glad my kids were not involved in swim because I would not be able to get up that early. And if you start your day that early, you've got swim, you've got school assignments, you've got your backpack and your lunch and all the things. I can understand how you might forget to pack your music books, your piano books for your lesson after school. So in my studio, that's not a scary thing. Please still come to your lesson, even if you don't have your books. For one, I have backup copies of most of the music that I share with my piano students. And for two, sometimes it's kind of nice to break the routine. And if you don't have your books, well, maybe we can work on some sight reading, or maybe we can create some music. A couple of episodes ago, I talked about iReal Pro is an app that I've had for a long time, but I've just recently rediscovered it. And so that would be a fun time to use iReal Pro in your lesson. There's a lot of music making that can be done, even if you don't have your books. So here is another thing that might scare your piano teacher. What if you actually paid attention to the expression marks and the dynamics in your music? Ah, scary stuff. So many piano kids just do the bare minimum. They try to find the notes on the piano. They try to figure out which piano keys to press, and maybe they'll pay attention to how long the note is supposed to last. Maybe they're noticing pitch and rhythm. If you take the extra step to also notice dynamics and maybe accent marks or staccato and legato, and you actually put some thought into the musical expression, watch how scared you can make your piano teacher. They might even faint and fall out of their chair. This next one really does scare your piano teacher, and that is if you are the first lesson of the day and you arrive 15 or 20 minutes before your lesson time. Don't do that. I know that in other situations, it's good to arrive early. And my husband, bless his heart, he's very patient with me. He says to arrive on the scheduled time is to be late. To be on time is to be about 10 minutes early. And I'm not, that's not my philosophy. When it comes to piano lessons, your lesson time starts at that time. And if I'm already working with the student, you're welcome to come in quietly. I train my students to come in quietly and have a seat. And they're actually my alarm clock to let me know it's time to wrap up the previous lesson. And then we trade out that way. But if you're the very first lesson of the day and you come 20 minutes early for me, who knows what you're going to find. The way my schedule is, I may be having a late lunch and I'm trying to scarf down my food before your lesson time is. And if you show up even earlier than that, I'm not going to be very happy. And I may even get indigestion because I tried to eat my food too fast. Some teachers teach early in the morning and maybe they're still getting ready. Wouldn't that be scary if you came into your piano teacher's studio and they're still in their robe having their morning coffee? Hopefully they're a little more prepared than that. But piano lessons is not the time, especially if you only have a 30-minute lesson. It's not a good idea to show up 20 minutes early for your piano lesson. Don't scare your teacher that way. Another way that you can scare your piano teacher and keep them on their toes is to ask thoughtful questions. Some teachers want to have a practice record. Let me know how many minutes you practiced every day. And I can see some value in that. But for me, I know that a student has really dedicated some time to learning their music if they are asking me thoughtful questions. Miss Davis, I have been trying to figure out this rhythm, how to make my hands work together. And this is what I came up with, but I still don't think it's exactly right. Will you help me with this part? Absolutely. That's what I'm here for. I love it when students come in with thoughtful questions. When I give them their theory homework, their workbook to do, and they've worked through the other problems, but then they'll say, I was confused on this part. And they'll write a question mark in their on their workbook. Fantastic. If you felt good about all this other stuff, let me grade it real quick. We don't have to talk about that. We can spend more time talking about the things that you didn't understand. But if you haven't looked at it all week long, we don't know what you do understand and what you don't. So we have to talk about everything. So if you want to scare your piano teacher, ask them some thoughtful questions. Another way to scare your piano teacher is to actually count and do the math for your rhythm patterns. One time I had a student who just never was taught how to calculate the time in her music. And she frankly said to me, if there's not very many dots in the measure, then I know that I can spread them out a little bit. And if there's a lot of dots, then I got to play faster. And she's not exactly wrong, but she was kind of shooting in the dark and flying blind, and whatever other crazy analogy I can try to think of. There is a mathematical process, a formula to follow when you're calculating the time and when each note should happen. And so if you take the time to count that out, notice your time signature and see, okay, there's 4 beats per measure, and I see I've got 2 quarter notes and a half note. Make sure you hold that half note for 2 full beats. That will scare your piano teacher if you're counting. What if you show up to your piano lesson and you have not read your assignment at all? Your piano teacher, believe it or not, they put a lot of thought into how to give you reminders for your assignment. The way I operate is I still like to create just an actual pen and paper planner. I like to design them every year, and I have a little binding system that I use, and that's just sort of my thing. And so I'm handwriting the assignment with my students that are in 6th grade or higher. I train them to write their assignment. I'll say, write that down. How are you going to remember that when you go home and I'm not with you? What notes do you need to give yourself, either in the music or in your practice planner, so that you'll be able to recall that information and have an effective practice session at home? Some teachers don't like to have a paper, hard copy of their assignments, and so they type things up either through Google Classroom or just a Google Drive or email. There are lots of different practice apps. Tonora was a big one that all the news lately is the fact that Tonora is going to have to shut their doors. They're not going to offer their app anymore. So a lot of teachers are rethinking, what am I going to use to convey to my students? No method, whether it's a pencil and paper or email or some sort of practice app, none of those methods are going to be valuable if you don't do your job and actually refer to that information. If you don't read your assignment all week long, and then you come back to your lesson and I don't know what to practice, or then you're not going to make any progress, and that's going to scare your piano teacher. They're going to wonder, how long is this student going to stay in my studio? How serious are they about lessons? Are they going to continue to enroll? Your piano teacher depends on teaching lessons as their livelihood. Yes, they love music and they love sharing music with their students, but it's also a business transaction. And if you're not going to carry your side of the equation, you're not going to do your deal, then are they going to continue to enroll you? Are they going to think that you're going to continue to enroll? So if you want to scare your piano teacher, stop reading your assignment book. Blech, don't do that. Read your assignment book. Read the information that your piano teacher shares with you. What about showing up to piano lessons with really long fingernails? That's a good way to scare your piano teacher. Oh my goodness. When my fingernails, I probably have my nails longer than most teachers would, but they don't reach the end, past the end of my fingertips. I used to have longer fingernails, and one of my piano teachers said, nope, to be able to play the piano properly, you need to clip your nails. And sometimes a student will come in because maybe they were in a wedding, and so they got to have, nice nail extensions, whatever that is, or they're going to prom, and so they want special nails. I can understand that, and I appreciate that. And I might not say anything if it's just a one-time deal. They show up with lessons, I'll let them play, and then they can figure out pretty quickly that those nails get in your way and you're clicking on the piano keys. If the nail gets stuck, in between the piano keys and rips, then that can be painful and bloody. And so you don't want that to happen to your finger. Your piano teacher doesn't want that to happen to their piano. So as a rule, it's better to keep your fingernails clipped, not past the end of your tip, so that when you press the key, you're just making contact with the piano key with the tip of your finger, the pad of your finger, not your fingernail. And be ready to face the consequences with your teacher if you show up with long fingernails because of some sort of special occasion. I don't know what your piano teacher is going to do. This piano teacher will try to work around it, but if it becomes a habit, we're going to have a conversation. Ugh. Another way to scare your piano teacher. By the way, this looks like it's about 9th on our list. So we're rounding out the top 10. But one way to really scare your piano teacher is to come to your lesson sick. Yuck. Don't come to your lesson sick. Yeah, I think this is probably a less common problem since we're coming out of the pandemic and everybody is very vigilant about washing hands and washing surfaces and taking extra precautions if you're feeling sick. So I'm hoping you're still being careful. I have had students that didn't realize they were sick and they went to school and maybe they're starting to feel kind of but they still go on with the lesson. And if I see it, it just makes me a little extra cautious. I want to keep my distance. I want to make sure I wash my hands after their lesson. I want to make sure I wash the piano keys, sanitize the piano keys after their lesson. So it's really best, if you're not feeling well, to cancel. If your teacher offers a reschedule opportunity, take advantage of that. Since the pandemic, a lot of teachers are able to do online lessons. And so that can be a big help. If a child is feeling okay, but maybe they're feverish, then if they're up to trying to be at their piano, then we'll still do a lesson together from a distance. I did have a student, one of my biggest fear, I am not someone that can come to your help when you are sick to your stomach. Whenever our kids were little, I could take care of the other end if you had bathroom issues. But if you were, I'm trying to be delicate because I don't want to make anybody else sick. But if you were sick to your stomach, if you were nauseated, that's a safe word, maybe, you were on your own. My husband could help you and he would bring you fresh water and a washcloth for your face. But if I helped you, we would both be sick. I would be pushing you away so that I could take care of my own business. Anyway, I'm embarrassed about that, but I am not a good helper. And so I had a student in my studio a couple of years ago, and he told me, I'm not feeling very well. And you could just see the look on his face. I'm so grateful that he had the presence of mind to get up. He knew where our restroom is. He got up and he didn't quite make it to the restroom. He got sick on the hardwood floor before he got to the restroom. But thank goodness he did not get sick on my piano. Can you imagine? Oh boy. Okay. I don't even want to go there anymore. If you are sick, stay home. You need the rest. And your piano teacher doesn't need to be that kind of scared. So, okay, enough said about that. The last way that you can really scare your piano teacher, if you're wanting to just really make them nervous, oh boy, they are going to be so scared, is to show up for your lesson practiced and prepared. I have a student right now. Well, it sounds bad to say that I have a student right now. The tendency, the modus operandi for most students, at least in my experience, is that they're very busy and they try to do a little bit of piano. Maybe we practice 2 or 3 times. And so, okay, this is what we'll do. I'll share the information with you again. I'll try to think of some way to make a different connection for you. I try to be gracious because I know everybody's busy these days. But I've got some students that show up to the lesson. I played everything that you gave me. I tried the next song in the book. I did some extra theory homework, and I have this other song that I would like for you to help me learn. That is scary because now all of a sudden I'm not in my comfort zone where I'm being gracious to the student and okay, we'll go at a slower pace and I'm way ahead of you. With these students that show up to their lesson prepared, I've got to be on my toes to make sure that I am keeping them challenged and not overly overwhelmed with too difficult of music. But if they're moving forward, then I need to make sure I've got lots of music coming down the pipeline to share with them. And I've got to be really thinking and really creative about how to keep them in music, so that they're still challenged and they're not bored. So if you want to scare your piano teacher, show up to your lesson practiced and prepared. First of all, actually, I think it will delight them and they'll be so pleased. You will make their day. If all of the other students that they have had that week came to lessons with their excuses of, I didn't practice and here's why, and I'm just so busy. For a piano kid to tell their teacher that they are so busy is laughable, but that's okay. In their world, in their mind, they're busy. Relatively speaking, as they mature and have other adult responsibilities, they will wish that they were that kind of busy that they were in 5th grade. So this was kind of a fun list of 10 things that scare your piano teacher. Some of them are real. Some of them I was being a little bit silly with, but I hope it gives you some food for thought of how you approach piano lessons. And if you don't have your books, still show up for your lesson, but not too early. And make sure you get your practice in, read your assignment, and see how much you can scare your piano teacher this week. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will look forward to seeing you again next week.